Hey guys, it's Brigitte with Sandy Seed Company, and in this video I'm going to talk about how to get your tiny little adorable germinated fall season crops up into a size that they can be ready to be planted out into the garden. If you've checked out our part 1, now you know how to germinate the seeds. This part 2 video is going to show you what you need to know to get them up and healthy and happy and into a size that you're ready to put into the garden. During that timeline, a lot of things can go wrong, but we're here for you. And in this video, I will troubleshoot every single possible thing that you can do wrong so that you can avoid them and get happy, healthy seedlings for the garden. I'm going to help you know what things to look for along the way so that you can prevent basic mistakes and even more advanced mistakes so that you can become really good at starting fall crops in zone 9 and 10. Okay, so this video is all about how we are starting seeds outdoors. I'm really clarifying that because we have tons of videos on how to start your seeds indoors, but guess what? In zone 9 and 10, for many years, for most of the time we've been a seed company, we've started our seeds outdoors. You don't need a greenhouse or indoor environment to start your fall seeds. Now, I am going to go over troubleshooting tips along the way, things that you'll commonly find are mistakes that you'll make and why they're happening and how you can fix them. First thing that is a very common mistake people make is they do not thin their seedlings. You cannot expect a crowded seedling cell to perform very well. And that's because they're competing for a very small space which has the nutrients and the moisture that it needs. You need to make sure that you thin them to 1 per cell. I know it's hard. I know it really, this hurts your heart to pull these guys out, but they're never really going to be that happy if I leave 5 or 6 little plants in this tiny area. The good news is you can basically just relocate them if you have an empty cell, which I actually don't have any empty cells because my seed starting game is so on point. If you did have an empty cell, let's say like over here, I could actually transplant one of these by just using a spoon, a knife. And this is why I recommend starting seeds in each corner, because it makes it easier to pull out one happy little guy and put him in a new home. Now, remember, when you do that, moisture is important. You gotta water really well because you just rip that plant out of its home and put it in a new home and it's very shocked, quite literally. So thin 1 per cell. And I don't care if it's in a 50 cell like this, or even if you're using something like this size. You really can't have a lot more than max 2 plants in here that are happy. The more plants you have, the smaller they'll be and the more they'll struggle and compete with one another. The next thing you need to consider after your seedlings have actually germinated is the right amount of moisture throughout their growing life to keep them happy. Now this is a little hard and everybody's situation is going to be different, but as I mentioned in a bunch of our videos, you got to use seed starting mix. That's the key. And then you have to look for key indicators that your soil is either too dry or too moist. If you're seeing this green algae, I mean literally, it looks like the bank of a pond. That is an indicator that the soil was too moist for too long, and you really start breeding a lot of fungus and bacteria that can be detrimental to the growth of the plant. So this means you need to pull off from your watering, either watering less frequently or potentially getting them into more sunlight with more airflow. Either way, the soil needs to dry out a little bit because it's too moist. Now, one cheater trick that you can do is you can actually just add good dry soil on top. So, like for example, this is way too moist. You can see the greenery and I've got some stuff popping up. I can come in here and put a nice thin layer of seed starting mix or just pure perlite, and that's going to help dry it out and keep the fungus from growing up onto the plant. Now this only works if you're bottom watering, because if I put this nice dry clean soil on top and then I come in with the hose and I water it again, didn't really fix the problem. Now if it's too dry, it's going to look like this. You can see this crust, and you can see some green, so it might be a little confusing, but this is because it was kept really moist and then left to dry out completely. And I can also tell because this tray is so light. When your soil dries out completely, if there are seeds germinating in that soil, they will shrivel up and die. If you have small seedlings in here, like you can see, they really start to stagnate. And this is a great side by side. These were planted at the exact same time. So these were planted on the 18th, and look at the size difference between these two. This has been kept moist, maybe a little bit on the verge of too wet, but they're doing okay. And this has struggled for water, and look how stagnant they are. They're so much smaller. They're really struggling compared to these guys. So if you start to see crust like this and the tray feels really light, it's an indicator that you're not watering enough. So if you didn't know, your seed starting mix is likely going to be sterile, meaning it's going to not have anything in it really but soil, and you have to feed your seedlings. We recommend that you feed your seedlings almost every time you water with the diluted amount of organic liquid fertilizer, something like a fish and guano. This is a product we carry. I really like it. You can dilute it by half of what it recommends, add it to your watering can, and put it at the bottom of the tray, and your plants will suck it up through their roots and be fed every time you water. That's a great way to get your seedlings up and growing to a size that you can plant out, and that is what commercial growers do. If your seedlings aren't doing a whole lot, it's because you're probably not feeding them enough. Now, this is actually an example of fertilizer burn. So see this burning that's happening here? What happened was this tray was not even, it was not on a flat surface. The fertilizer and the water pooled to one side, and I purposely gave it too much fertilizer to show you guys what that looks like. So if you start to see this in your seedlings, you're likely going to have to start over. So another key thing you have to remember is airflow. This is the #1 reason why I like to start my seedlings outside versus inside. If you have seedlings inside, you have to have a fan. Outside, you can just use natural wind to exercise your plants. Your plants have to move. That moving makes them have stronger cell walls and make them grow up to be sturdier plants. Additionally, airflow is going to help keep off flies, soil gnats. It's going to help decrease the intensity of fungus and other things that are growing in your soil. There has to be airflow or air movement. One of the reasons why we have under this beautiful jacaranda tree is because there's a great cross breeze here, and these plants are almost constantly moving and getting exercised so that they grow to be big and healthy and happy. All right, so I'm here to make your life easier, and here's some things that you should know to really make this process a lot easier. First, plant into a cell size that you don't have to pot up. Look, in zone 9 and 10, we don't have to pot up because we don't have frost dates and we don't have to worry about the season ending. The bigger the size of the cell, the easier it will be for you as a new gardener. This is the perfect size for most crops. The next thing you need to know is whether or not you need to harden off your plants. Well, we don't have extreme cold weather here that we have to worry about, but we do have very intense sun. So I will move these in and out of direct sunlight on cooler days to help acclimate them to the intensity of the sun. The other thing you can do is simply put up our 40% shade cloth. It makes such a big difference and will help protect your babies until they're big enough and healthy enough to enjoy full sun without the shade cloth. As fall goes on, it will get cooler and the sun will get lower in the horizon, and the intensity of the sun will also decrease, and these will naturally be able to grow without the shade cloth. The last question that I want to cover here, which is a very common one, is how big do they need to be to plant out into the garden? Well, that's totally up to you. The bigger they are, the more they can defend themselves from bugs and insects and maybe slightly dry soil. I always tell people, look at what you buy at a nursery and try to get your plants up to that size. For me, these guys are a little bit too small. I would wait until they're about twice that size before I plant them up. And when I plant them up, I am making sure that I put down a layer of Sluggo Plus to help defend them from roly-polies, snails, slugs, and all the other insects that can come along and chew them down. Now we have several videos specifically about planting out, about transplanting. Make sure you check those out so you're armed with all the knowledge you need to save your babies from getting eaten in the middle of the night. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so that we can be a part of your growing journey in zone 9 and 10. And look, I'm only one person. I'm one gardener, one farmer. I would love to hear from you. What common mistakes have you encountered over the years? And what are the things that you do to help make them easier? And what advice do you maybe have for gardeners in zone 9 and 10 that can help us all grow better together? Now remember, a lot can go wrong from the time that you germinate a seed to the time you get it to a size that it's ready to plant out. The big things to remember is making sure that you have really good soil, airflow, looking out for algae growth, for basically too much watering, and making sure you don't burn your seedlings with too much fertilizer. Now, that's just a few of the things that can go wrong. Every time you start your seeds, you might want to go back and rewatch this video, because a mistake you make this time, you may not make next time, and vice versa. So we are here for you, and we want to hold your hand to make you as successful as possible. So make sure you rewatch this video if you need to get your seedlings up into a size that they're ready to put out into the garden. Okay, now comes the really fun part. What are the things that you need to have on hand to be successful and apply everything that we learned in this video? Well, first, the calendar is going to help you know what to plant every single month. Again, this is only for zone 9 and 10. Maybe if you're in 8, you can use it, but we really focus on zone 9 and 10. So check that out. And here are 3 crops that I'm really excited about planting this fall. So every year I always plant nasturtium because they're so easy. If you got kids, highly recommend it. Arugula is something we eat a lot of in our house, so that's an essential. And don't forget that fall is the time to plant your sweet peas, so get those in the ground as soon as possible so you can get lots of blooms come spring.